kindly fill it for me in a few minutes. David, thank you for joining. All right, so I think the rest will be joining in soon, but I would like to introduce the person who would be taking us through this topic today, so that we can kickstart. So today we have Nehemiah Atiga. He has over 20 years of international experience in the IT industry and in management positions. He has expertise in software engineering, project management, business analysis, and process engineering. He's one of Ghana's leading tech influencers, and he has founded the Hatua Tech. He founded the Hatua Tech in 2011. He's the co-founder and the Ghana director at Accelerate. And so today, if Nehemiah is here, we are ready for you. Thank you so much for joining in today. Nehemiah, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. Please, can you give me access to share my screen?
Of course, let me just stop sharing mine, and yes, you can share your screen now.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
And you can see my screen as well.
Yes, please, we do. We see your screen.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome to this session. This session is going to be focusing on commercialization, the commercialization process, a roadmap to commercialization of research. In this session, we will be exploring essential steps or some critical steps involved in bringing a research from innovation or from a concept point to market, which would help you successfully drive economic growth. So let's just dive in. I think we've already lost 17 minutes of our time. If you have questions whilst I'm speaking, you can maybe write in the chat box or write it down, and then when we get to the Q&A session, we can dive deeper into answering those questions. So as she already said, my name is Nehemiah Atiga. I wear a number of hats, but I'll just focus on these two, Hatua Tech and also Accelerate. What is the definition of commercialization? Commercialization refers to the process of transforming research outcomes, innovations, or technologies into marketable products or services. It bridges the gap between academia, an innovator, and the business world. So basically, you are looking at a process where when you gather insights about some specific area, you are able to take that into creating or building a service or a product that will then make that research meaningful. And so academia might come up with a certain research that will influence certain things that is done in industry, or someone who is seeking to innovate or seeking to solve a problem would carry out some research, which will then eventually give us an opportunity to see a product or a service that solves a problem and gives economic value. And so it's a multi-stage journey that requires careful planning and execution. Each step or stage plays a crucial role in bringing an idea to the market. Why is it important for us to commercialize our research, or what really do we stand to gain from it? So effective commercialization can lead to various benefits, including increased revenue, including job creation, and obviously positive societal impact. And so it's a crucial step in realizing the full potential of research. So again, whether you are a businessman or you are an entrepreneur or you are someone in academia, the reason why you carry out research is to find out the current state of something and use that to influence the future state of the thing if that's important for you. Obviously, people may have certain objectives just to find out why certain things are in a certain way, but not necessarily to maybe improve on it. It's just to know why this happened or why this happens all the time or why this is done this way. However, for the purpose of our conversation, for the purpose of our session this afternoon, we want to look at steps that at least takes us from ground zero to ground 100, where we are taking that research and getting commercial value out of it. So what are the key steps in the commercialization process? I'll dive deeper into all of them, but let me just go through these 8 steps quickly. Idea generation and intellectual property protection, market research and validation, business plan development, funding acquisition, development and testing, manufacturing, stroke execution and distribution, marketing and sales, scaling and growth. So these are the steps. Before I jump into these steps, I just want to talk a little bit about some steps that we take when we do our research. Because once I jump into these, I'm looking at things right from the commercialization standpoint. Anyone, whether it's academia or just a regular businessman or all of us on this call, if we decide to research about something or research into a particular area, first step we want to do is define our research goals or objectives. And then once we've done that, we want to understand what our stakeholders, who our stakeholders are, and what we are going to do when we engage them. And then when we move from there, we want to be able to also, once we've gathered the research, we want to be able to validate that and the outcomes of the research. And when we are armed with this research, we are able to what? Take that and say that we want to take that information into a certain stage of commercialization if it makes sense. So if, for example, I think that the way technology training is administered in this country is not innovative enough, and that we should use an approach where people learn by doing and people learn about new technologies and have a certain foundation to be able to provide solutions that are efficient and are globally competitive. I may have done my research about technology education, so computer science and all of those things. And then I may try and understand all the stakeholders in that space and also then analyze the outcome of my research. So maybe currently all the tech companies tell you that the folks who come from school that they hire are usually not ready for the market and they have to spend 6 months to a year to prep them to actually add value to the organizations. Or a bank says that when they come in, we are not getting value, so we are outsourcing our work to Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe. And you think of all of these things and you want to find out why that challenge is there. And so maybe it's the approach of tuition, maybe it's the approach of of the entire education process. Maybe it's simply a situation where the young people are not building experiences by practicing and things like that. So if I've done all of this research and I want to then take it to a next level, I want to commercialize it based on my findings, or I've devised a new way um of getting energy from urine or from waste, from bio waste. I then go into these steps where I would generate my ideas from the research, and then I'll look at protecting it, and then I'll look at so the research also never ends. Even though I've done this first level of research and it's giving me an opportunity to come up with ideas, I would have to also go a step further to even research about the market. So I used technology education, for instance. So now, once I've done this first level of research, now I have to look at how this is going to affect those who are going to even consume the content around tech education. So whether it's those who are administering in the schools or it's those who are consuming it, the students, I need to do extra by carrying out market research and validating that. And then I need to come up with a business plan to execute this product or service that I want to come up with. And if it requires me producing a certain curriculum, it requires me even producing an app that will help in tuition and all of that, I would need funding. So I have to find some acquisition. I need to acquire some funds. And again, we'll go deeper in some of these things, and we can look at ways of funding these things without even funding them, which means you may not be funding it um, with cash directly. Maybe a situation where you have a partner that's helping you execute it. And part of this again will be prototyping. So I talk about creating a curriculum. So I may even create a curriculum and pilot it in one university or in one technical institution and see how that pans out and test it before I actually go into full-blown execution and distribution. And so all of these steps are steps that we will look critically at to look at how the commercialization process works. But the first part of that journey begins with idea generation and thorough research. So like I said, you are armed with your research, and now with this research, you are able to identify the market gaps and understand what the customer needs are, and then you can develop your innovative solutions. So another example I'll give is um, let's say Airbnb. People, or even Uber, people realize that they had cars sitting at home, or people had rooms in their houses that were not being used. Based on research, you knew that when people travel, sometimes they don't want to stay in hotels, they want to stay in a home environment. People want vehicles that are coming to them conveniently for them to get to their locations. Someone had done this research, there was a market gap, they understood what the customer needs were. So what did they do? They developed innovative solutions that would not only that would not only give economic value to the person providing the service, but the person who owns the platform. So those who own by an Airbnb get some value from it. Those who own the buildings and the vehicles get some funds from it, and the other players in the mix. So there's economic value for all the actors in the mix. The driver or the person who's giving out the building, everyone gets something out of it. And then it provides convenience for the person who is also enjoying the service, so they keep coming back. And so when you are generating your ideas, it's important and critical for you to make sure that your core research or your research that you did, you are able to underpin these insights, the gaps in the market, what the customer needs, and how you can provide a solution that will bridge that gap or that will satisfy the customer's needs or their demands. If you are able to do this, then you are actually on a path to success. And it's one thing that we worry about a lot, or sometimes we take for granted in our part of the world, and that is IP. That is IP. We tend to feel, so somebody is shooting a movie and then they put a song, they just take somebody's song and put it there because they think that it doesn't matter. Somebody takes your idea and starts replicating it with no recourse to you. In this country, I've seen a situation where somebody's idea and name used for a certain event was going to be replicated by a big brand. They had done all the advertisement and everything. They were going to do this in Kumasi, and it had to be shut down because the guy who owned the IP had not been consulted. So at this stage, when you've generated your ideas and everything, you want to be able to look at, whilst you are looking at the commercial potential, you want to also be able to look at how you can protect it. So whether what the product or the service you built, how you can protect it using a patent or using some copyright or trademarks, this would definitely help you safeguard the uniqueness of your ideas. And it's very important because then any form of unauthorized use, you can either clamp that down or make some gains from that. So if you actually want your idea to be properly protected, then you have to go through these steps. And so in Ghana, the Registrar General can help you do that. So that helps you to ensure that your work is exclusive. At the same time, so if anybody wants to copy, they may have to do a variation, but they can't do exactly the same thing, especially when you have protected it one way or the other. In certain instances, they can't even do it at all until they've come to you. It's also important that whilst you try to commercialize things, you also meet regulatory requirements. Regulatory compliance is something we also take for granted, but it's very important because it gives, when you are compliant by regulators, it gives a certain integrity to your product or service. And so obtaining every necessary certification is very important to ensure your product's safety, to also ensure efficacy. Because if, for instance, a medical product is even food or something, you have to go to the FDA, it's important that you do that. So you can even flaunt that and say, I'm FDA certified. If it's in the service industry and there are some ISO certifications that will enable you highlight the fact that you've gone through processes to ensure quality, then you should do it because you're better off being legal on the market than being illegal. When you cut corners and you are pulled back by people finding out that your product or your service hasn't been certified by regulators that are in your space, you may lose ground and you may not be able to recover. And so it's very important that you do that and you make sure that you are certified when it's required. Even if you are not ready, you may start the steps. So even the Bank of Ghana, for instance, if you are building a fintech application, now they have the sandbox that you can actually sign up for and consume. So you do not go directly in a certain way. You're in a certain environment that allows you to test everything. And then once you've met certain things, you can easily get a certification because you have met the requirements, but you've tested in an environment that is built by the regulator. And there are different kinds of things that the regulators provide. Once you start engaging, it helps you understand what will be required from the regulator standpoint. So, like I said, research will be built in all the steps, and so even to find out how you can protect your idea is through research. If you have to go to the Registrar General or any other, depending on your geographical location, you have to go and find out what is required and how you can register a trademark and everything. And so that's research right there. That's research. If you have to do with regulations, same thing, you have to research. So like I said, research will be built in every step. So now you've done that, you've gone through the idea generation, you've gone through the IP process and the certification. Now you are going to do some research to make sure that your idea meets the market needs. And so you have to do market research where you are trying to understand the market needs, you are trying to understand the trends, you are trying to understand competition if there's any, and you can refine your research innovation to meet the real world demands. So thorough market research will help you assess the demand for the product or service. And obviously the validation will also help you obtain feedback from potential customers. So again, let me go back to my example I've started using, technology education. Now, how do I do my validation? I may decide to take that curriculum and run it by lecturers or industry people to validate what is required in the market and also validate what is possible in terms of even the skill set of those who would be able to deliver the, the lessons for people to acquire those skills. And then also see if those who would be attending these institutions would see that this is an opportunity for them to be globally ready and globally competitive. And so even by just doing this, what am I doing? I'm able to identify the market needs because I went to industry. Then I check globally what is required. I'm able to see the trends. And then I'm checking whether others are coming up with such things, which means I look at my competition. So just by doing this, I'm able to identify what the demand is for that product or service that I want to put out there. And so it's important that we look at this carefully when we do so. And it may not necessarily be a very complicated process or some full-blown commissioning of doing market research. It may be you actually engaging with these stakeholders with your questions and gathering the data and the information. If you have the funds, you may commission an organization to go ahead and do the market research for you, for you to be able to compare what happens in all the institutions or all the various geographical locations. So again, if you are trying to build a workforce that is globally competitive, maybe you want to look at what is happening in Europe and what is happening in North America and maybe North Africa and the southern parts of Africa. And that would help you also look at what is happening elsewhere. Now, next step, because now we have done market research and validation. I want to go into creating a business plan. And so that business plan, it's a structured plan that outlines the product that we are trying to put on the market or the service, who the target market is, do a competitive analysis, and also look at the revenue model. So my examples, my 3 examples that I used, if I take the curriculum, I could decide to own it and have proprietary rights to it. And so the institutions that run that curriculum may pay me something year on year, like how schools are paying those who go with the GCSE model, they have to pay something to them. And people who are running certain types of systems have to constantly pay. I can decide to go with that as a revenue model. I can also go with a model where I'm just selling it off The example I gave with Airbnb and Uber, there's more or less a share of revenue or profits because the person who owns the property or the person who owns the vehicle takes some and the platform owner takes part of the funds. And again, that is something you have to look at if you are trying to commercialize your research. You want to look at how you can make money out of it. You if you want something that's sustainable, you can decide to use an approach where um you are constantly going to feed off what is there. If you think that this is something that you can sell off one off and just walk away and go and chill on a beach in Barbados or something, you can decide to also just use a model where you sell off your research or your product and service one off, and or if it's actually a product or a service that does not require any form of recurring funds generation. But I doubt that there are a lot of things that do not require that. Quite a lot of things require or gives you the opportunity to have a revenue model that would give you recurring funds. So that those are things you should look at. And then you look at marketing strategy, which is all part of a business plan. Again, your business plan, depending on how viable it looks, would attract investors and stakeholders. And so, if, for instance, I want Ministry of Education to be a stakeholder or a partner in me rolling this out, or I want all the Investors Council to support what I'm doing, my plan should make sense, especially if I want them in terms of being partners to the point where they are sharing revenue. So those are things you need to look at. Now, how do you acquire funds to implement your plan? Funding is crucial to almost every aspect of your commercialization process. Whether you are doing market research or you are creating a business plan, you want a solid business plan, you may need a professional to do that for you. You may also download templates and try and do something yourself if you don't have the funds at all. But whatever it is requires some level of fun. Remember that your time you spend, even in generating the ideas, requires funding if you are truly costing your time. Now, so for your commercialization process, how can you get funding? You can get funding from grants that are available. So there are some institutions, grant-making institutions that have funds for specific areas, especially if you are doing something around maybe energy, renewable energy, and certain things. You may easily be in fintech and certain things around improving the environment, maybe agroforestry models. You may get some grants that are available. Then there are some venture capital folks who then some I will say shy away from them because they are just thinking about their money and their returns. So depending on what your product or services, you may decide to go to them or not go to them. Then there are angel investors who are much more flexible. And then there are folks who you can get funds from all over using crowdfunding platforms. So you can do your crowdfunding through some of these platforms, Kickstarter and all of those, GoFundMe and all of these platforms. And then so you put a pitch of your research and your product or service that you want to build. And then people who buy into the idea would put funds or commit funds into it. Kiva, people use Kiva to finance farms or agri-related things. So there are quite a number of those platforms that gives you an opportunity to raise funds, or you can just crowdfund from your family and friends, and or even randomly use some of our social media platforms, put information on your product or service based on the research out there, make it compelling enough, and you may find people actually giving you the funds to take off. You may not need all the funds straight away. You may just maybe need funds to even prototype, and some people may be willing to just fund that bit just to see how it goes, and once you have that in place, that your MVP or your prototype could help you gain more funding later. And so I talked about prototyping. So turning your concept into a tangible prototype is also a critical step. Prototypes provide a clearer picture of your final product. Um, Again, my idea of tech education. So that curriculum, I may come up with maybe a prototype curriculum once lecturers and other researchers and other professors and all of you, and even folks from the ministry and all of these people are reviewing it. What are they doing? They're actually reviewing my prototype. And when we start piloting it, what are we doing? We are testing it. So if we took 3 students or 5 students and we started this with them, the output will give us a fair idea of how this is going to turn out and how it's going to improve tech education in this country. And so once my prototype works, or once my test results make sense or it looks viable, I'll be able to attract investors. And so we always say that when you're building prototypes, it could be rough. It might not be the fanciest thing. So you are making honey or you are making gari. You have done some research on some special gari that you've done from made from sweet potatoes or something. Um, it may not be the fanciest looking gari. It may not even be packaged nicely. Maybe your first point of your testing is to just make sure that it tastes good. And then once you have that, maybe you may decide to go through a certain process of processing it more to make it finer. And then maybe you can decide to come up with a package and see, even so, as part of maybe your second phase of prototyping, you have a nice package just to see how people relate to the packaging and things like. So once you also get that right, you are iterating to improve your prototype. And the feedback from the testing will help you improve the product design and functionality. Now, if you have done that, you know that it's refined. You know that it will fit the market. So then what do? You go into the next step. The next step is for you to manufacture or execute. I use manufacture here because in certain instances, your product is something that you have to manufacture or build. In certain instances, it's just you executing it. If you're a filmmaker or you are a music producer or what you're providing is a service, you are just executing your prototype or your idea. And so once the prototype is refined, I mean, it's obviously time for you to scale up or execute. Um, and you have to then establish your distribution channels. So in my example, I have my universities as my channels. In the honey example, I may decide to use supermarkets, I may decide to use schools, I may decide to use restaurants as my distribution channels. I may look at where my uptake will be higher um, and use those channels. I may also just look at it from the numbers perspective and say that I'm going to use this route. So it just involves us making the product available to customers. And we have to always, because you have researched into who is in the space, who your target customer is, or who your target consumer of your research and your product and service is, you are able to select or select and develop your appropriate distribution channel. And again, I keep talking about partnerships because some partnerships can be the safest ways of distributing something and also can be the safest ways of not spending money to actually get your product out. Especially because there are people who are in the space who can drive things. And sometimes the regulator can become your partner because maybe there are things on the market that are not proper. And I know that some people might frown on this because they'll feel that the regulator is helping someone to create a certain monopoly. And we've seen that with certain industries in our country. But at the same time, I mean, if you are looking at doing business and you're looking to excel, you may really want to look at that. Well, so whilst we are looking at distribution, then it means that we are looking at marketing and sales. Effective marketing strategies are key to reaching your target audience. One of the things that we need to bear in mind every time we try to market a brand or a product or service is that your first step is to raise awareness or build awareness around that brand or that product or service. And when you are able to build that or create that awareness, it will then generate interest. And when you're able to generate interest, your target audience will become desirous of engaging with the brand or the product or service. And so awareness, interest, desire, and action. And the action will then turn into sales. And the sales effort just focuses on converting those potential customers into buyers. So we need to build a strong brand identity. That brand identity would enable you to build the awareness that you want based on the actions that you take. And this feeds back into what I said. Research is part of everything that we do. So when you're building a brand identity, also engaging in market research, and that will help you develop that comprehensive marketing or promotional plan that will tell you that maybe I should go and stand at Accra Mall to do this, or maybe when the universities are having university council meeting, I should ask to sponsor and then ask for a slot just to go and speak to them about this and go and send like an information pack to all the vice chancellors and all the presidents of these universities so that they are able to look at what I'm offering. I'm using the universities again because of the example I've used from the beginning. So then this gives you an opportunity to highlight your innovation and also differentiate your product from your competitors so that your go-to-market strategy is either focused on whether you're selling directly to your audience or you're going through your partners or you're even licensing other stakeholders or even some of your partners to reach out or to pull it out. You simply have to adopt what will help you reach your target audience effectively. And once you are constantly researching every step of the way, you are sure to deliver the product in the right manner to the right consumer. So we will now look at scaling and growth. As demand increases, the focus shifts from scaling operations, shifts to scaling operations because now you've started rolling out the thing. Now every university wants to participate in your program because they want their computer science students or computer engineering or technology students to be able to come out in a certain way, or that honey that you are producing or that dairy that you are producing is now being adopted. And so the demand is increasing. Now you need to scale your operations. So you need to start optimizing your production processes. What do you do? What do you improve? So you look at time from start to end in terms if it's some manufacturing thing, getting your production materials and your production planning process in place to make sure that you meet the demands of the market. Because we've also seen products that could have done so well or services that could have done so well, but because they did not evolve with the times, they were not dynamic enough, they did not pay attention to the execution process, they ended up dying off because they couldn't meet the demand. And so people had to switch off and go and look for other alternatives or even decide that they don't want it at all because today if I'm going to get this and tomorrow I want it or I need it and I can't get it, then maybe I should look for something I can consistently get. And so you need to look at that and establish your proper supply chain and also ensure quality. Ensure quality. If you don't ensure quality, you will die as a product or a service, or someone will come and the person will provide the quality and will take over. Or you simply be avoided. You may continue to stay on the market, but you realize that others have come and they've gained a greater market share, and you continue to have that small share because some people are just using your brand based on affinity, or maybe the price you give is relatively more affordable than the other ones. Commercialization doesn't end at launch. So once you learn the product, it hasn't ended. It's an ongoing process. So you're collecting customer feedback, you're analyzing market trends, you are looking at your performance, which will help you to adapt and refine your product to meet the changing needs and stay competitive. In order to do this, you just need to have a dynamic mindset or a dynamism mindset where you are constantly looking to improve what you have based on research, because collecting customer feedback is research. Analyzing market trends is research. Analyzing your performance metrics are your numbers, is research. And so that'll help you adapt and that'll help you make sure that you stay afloat. I used to say this maybe some 10 years ago. I used to say, you either adapt or die. So if you want to stay relevant, you want to stay competitive, you want to meet the demands, you want to meet the fast changing world, the demands of the fast changing world, and stay relevant, you either adapt or you die. What are some of the challenges in this process or in the commercialization process? Whilst commercialization offers great potential, it definitely has challenges. And some of these challenges may have to do with regulatory hurdles. I'll use BOG as an example, as I talked about the sandbox earlier. When the fintech space started growing, they had no regulations. And immediately they decided to come up with regulations. They wanted the people in the space to pay 30 million cedis, and they wanted that to be sitting in bank accounts. And straight away, we had to band it together and form Ghana Tech Chamber and start engaging with them. And we then had to make a case with other markets and also look at how, if they went to that approach, it would stifle innovation and not grow the industry. And we succeeded to a large extent, and they went ahead to tier the levels with enhanced PSP and the number of other ones. And so these challenges, you are going to face them, but again, you can mitigate them by engaging with regulators and engaging with all the stakeholders. Your competition will also always be there, because whilst you think about the idea, whilst you do the research, someone is also doing the research. Whilst you roll out, somebody sees what you've done as an interesting thing and they may decide to get into that space. You need to try and be better than the competition or be different from your competition, one way or the other, and that will help you solve this challenge. The funding constraints, it's something that prevents a lot of people from actually attempting to commercialize their research. So you find a lot of people who have done research, especially the folks in academia, and the research is sitting on shelves and gathering dust, because they are not getting funding. And that is why I said you can start from a certain point where you are not actually looking for funding to roll out the entire product or service based on the research, but actually starting to a certain point where you're even just prototyping, just to show viability, just to show the potential and opportunities that that research provides you, which will then encourage people to fund or be interested in putting some investment in your research. And then sometimes markets will shift, but if you are running a dynamic business or idea or product or service based on research, when the market shifts, it's easy for you to pivot because you are keeping your eye on the data, you are keeping your eye on the insights. That is critical in mitigating this challenge or risk. And so I would like to conclude here before I take questions. Remember that this process requires dedication. You cannot be interested in research and innovating through research without being dedicated, without being strategic around your planning, without collaborating, because you need to have all the actors in the space you are looking to research into, and the space you are looking to provide a service or a product to. And you need to be able to adapt as well. And each step is vital for turning your research into a successful market-ready product or service. And so in conclusion, the commercialization process is a dynamic journey that transforms research into tangible products, benefiting both society and the economy. By following the roadmap we've discussed, researchers and entrepreneurs can navigate the path to successful commercialization by bringing your research innovation into the commercial market. So thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my screen and then I can take questions. And Shanzi, I believe that you would moderate the Q&A.
Yes, please. Kindly, if you have any question, you can put it in the chat box so that we can read it out. Or you can also unmute and ask your question if there is any.
Hello.
Hi, Augustina.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hi, Daniel. Augustina,
Yeah.
please wait. Okay, Daniel, you can go on.
Okay.
My question is, he talk about at the beginning of the commercialization process, ideation and intellectual property protection. But what I know is that initial value of an idea is 0. So why not at the prototype, when it has been prototyped, that you do the intellectual property thing? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. That's a very good question. And so if in certain instances you need to actually start that process. And in fact, I advise that you start that process of finding out. If you do not find out, because remember that when you prototype, you're going to put your prototype out there. If you haven't commenced the process of finding out how you can protect your idea, what is going to happen? You won't be able to safeguard your innovation, and someone may just pick that up and run with it, which means that then not only do you have unauthorized use, but you have actually lost the first to market, maybe advantage of whatever you have. And so you need to start finding out about what sort of patents or copyrights or trademarks pertains to what you are trying to do, so that because remember that from finding out all of this, you're going to go into your idea generation anyway. And so once you have done your idea generation and you've started, you need to start asking these critical questions.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense and that has answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you very much.
Emmanuel, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a very nice presentation and well put. My question is, sometimes after the ideation stage, prototype and everything, most of the instance, you find yourself that before you can really scale up or go into the major space of commercialization, sometimes there have to be phases of either mergers, acquisition, or takeovers. So I would like you to throw some more light into how we can manage these 3 aspects in case we come across it in terms of our dealings. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, this is also a very good question. So at the point where you've done you need funding, or you need to somewhat roll out, having a certain type of partnership through some being acquired can be a way. Some of the solutions we see on the market, we use on our phones, were acquired by bigger brands. Some of the products that Unilever may be rolling out to us, Nestle may be rolling out, were acquired by, but you did the research and you're able to prove that this is going to do ABCD, and they bought into the idea. So sometimes you are not the person who is going to actually go do the last mile commercialization. And there's nothing wrong with it. You may either have royalties for the rest of your life, or you may be put in the mix all through and through, or you may just cash out and go and start another process. But there's nothing wrong with merging with something that exists or being acquired by an organization that is bigger than you. Dangote Sugar became bigger because they acquired a number of their competitors, and also felt that this one we can actually alter this approach and ABCD. There's really nothing wrong with it. So what you need to do is look at whether it stands with your values. Because again, sometimes some organizations will also buy your research or a product, and then they will kill it because they see it as competition. So do you want to just cash out, or you believe in what you have, so you're not going to allow that acquisition to happen? And so you're going to make sure that you see it through. The reason why Meta or Facebook bought Instagram was because they wanted to buy Snapchat, and Snapchat did not agree. So they decided to buy Instagram and implement Snapchat's features in Instagram. These things will happen. So the bigger organization, if you decide that you won't sell, that could be another way they would try and kill you by also, but it's not like Snapchat has died. Snapchat hasn't died. It's actually grown bigger. So again, just look at how you can fund your research commercialization process. If it means using some of these partnerships or these models, then please go ahead. Don't shy away from it, because we tend to also we are too passionate about our ideas and our research to the point where we are not open to allowing someone to either acquire us or merge with us or even invest. Sometimes we even want to look for our own funds to actually just make sure that we have full control from beginning to end. But that may not work for us, because we do not have the mileage and the runway to handle it all through and through. So that's something you should consider if you are doing this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. So if you are just joining, there is a link in the chat box. Kindly fill for us for attendance. I also have a question, Nehemiah. So you mentioned some funding acquisitions that we can get. You mentioned the grants, venture capital. I don't know if you have like a database or links that people can easily click on or find to reach out to some of these what you mentioned. I mean, I don't know if you get my question.
Yeah, I understand. I have a number of them. So if you are keeping a mailing list of those who are attending or who have attended the session, we can share that with them, so that if they are looking to commercialize any of their research and they are looking to access or at least look at certain grants and their requirements, they can look at them and see how that fits into what they are trying to do. So I can share that with you and then you share it with them.
Okay, that'll be great. That'll be great. Please, is there anybody here who has any question? If you have any question, you can unmute and speak. Anybody? Okay.
So someone said they went for a business pitch and one of the panelists made a harsh comment on my idea. Till date, it has haunted me, and I haven't gone back to the idea. Okay, so these things do happen a lot. You need to take that as feedback and see how you actually move from that point. I don't know what was said to you, so I can't respond to what was said to you. But just look at it, because remember I said every step of the way is research. Going to that business pitch is actually research, because you are testing an idea against those experts or those panelists who are reviewing your pitch. And so whatever they say to you, take it in your strides as feedback to improve your idea. Don't throw it away because someone has said something that is negative. How do you take that feedback and move forward? In certain instances, I've given feedback to people and said, your solution or your product is doing 10 things. Can you actually focus on one, two? Because and there's nothing wrong, because you're starting off, and focus is very important. When it evolves, you may decide to roll in the other things. But you find some people, they vehemently want to do what they've set out to do. Then there are certain situations too that you see that just by listening to your pitch, I know that this is not going to work, because maybe I asked you a few things, or maybe I understand that industry. And if I tell you to either go back to the drawing board and see how you can actually do this to serve a market, you have to do that, because remember that if your idea is based on research, then it's not assumptions. There's actually some scientific basis for your idea. Unless there's no research to it, then that one, I think whatever anybody says to you will make you feel. But I don't think you should allow anybody to put you down. Please, just go back to the idea and take that feedback. No matter what was said to you, maybe analyze it and see how it will help you improve. If it's something that you even have to go back and engage that panelist or somebody who was there who could actually help you come up or away from that whole mindset, I think that you should do it. So, Kinsman, please don't give up.
Kinsman, don't give up. All right, Umar Adam, you can speak, please.
Okay. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Really appreciate the speaker. My question is, I run a technology research and development startup. The challenge is we have so many projects we do with different people, but in course of presentation, it's kind of difficult for people to really understand what we do, because it's touch like a different angle. Like one thing I can say, we have a project that has to do with carbon reduction. We have a project that have to do with fintech, but the backbone is more of research before the implementation. So I would like to understand what business model can we run for technology research and development. It's kind of new in the African context. People keep asking, what's the deep tech company that you run? So I would like to understand, how do we introduce the company, and what business model can we use for such a startup?
Thank you, Iman. That's an interesting question as well. So my first bet, if you ask me what do you do, I would probably say that we help businesses or organizations meet the needs of people. How? So then they ask you how. That's when you talk about the fact that you actually gather information or data to give them the opportunity to discover the insights that will help them serve their customers effectively and efficiently. And so you're not a fintech company, but you're actually giving them that insight based on the data or the research that you collect. So you become the backbone of a fintech company, because you keep providing information that improves the solution or the product or service that they give to their market. I know a number of companies who cut across the African continent, and they've been hired by the brewery companies, and you see that there's a new bottle of Malta Guinness, and because they are constantly researching, and maybe the taste has changed because they are constantly researching. And so what are they doing? They are providing that service for Guinness and Diageo to meet the needs of the customers. And that's what you do. And it's a very crucial part, because The core business of Diageo is not to go and do research. Their core business is to produce that product for consumers to buy. But your core business is to make sure that whatever they are providing to the customer meets their needs. And that is what you do. You provide the data to help them discover the insights. That's all you should be selling. You sell that value to them, and they know that once they go to the market with a data-driven product or service, they would succeed because they are meeting the needs of the consumer. I think Emmanuel has also written in there that he can help provide consultation to your startup as well. And I'm also open to providing consultation to those on here who would require a much more hands-on and detailed, should I say, involvement in your organization or your startup. So you can reach out to iSpace. I think iSpace would circle back to me, and then we can take a conversation from there.
All right, so I'm putting the link back. So kindly help me with your information so that we will be able to share the necessary details or the slides and the links and all that with you. Right. Thank you. So is there anybody else who has a question? So I'd like to ask what specific thing can businesses do, right, to identify their potential market? So say I have a business, like what can they do specifically to identify their potential market opportunities?
When you say what can they do, it goes back to my fundamental step that I outlined, which would be research.
Mm.
Do you get it? So which
Yeah.
means that if for instance I'm looking at the needs of students, my research would be focused on what students need. If it has to do with industry, and again, the example I was giving was because I've been running a tech company for enterprise technology company for the last 12 years. Accelerate was also built on the fact that we realized that there are scale-ups in the UK and in the US who were looking to hire a certain type of tech people, mid-level tech people. Based on our research and our customer journey, we started or founded Accelerate to actually feed that market. So we take tech talent from Ghana we want to be able to do 1 million tech jobs by a certain period. But so far, what we've done is try to look at what the gap is and bridge it. And so you look at what you want to focus on or the area you want to focus on, and then you find out how that place operates, all the actors in the mix. If you are trying to look at a food item, you are looking at a situation where how much, okay, let's use eggs. How much eggs are consumed on a daily by homes or by restaurants? And when you have a certain basis, you can also decide to find out how much of that is being produced. If you are going to go into the production yourself, at least you know that there's actually a demand for you to produce. If you're not going to do that, but what you're going to do is serve as a broker to pick from different poultry farmers to serve the market, you know that there's a demand because you've done your research. I say, and I say again, that the last thing you want to do is do business or put out any product or service based on assumption. You will get your hands bent. You may be lucky if the assumption works, but the best thing to do is have a basis to start, to have a basis to do it. And that can only be done if you're armed with some sort of research. And so once you are interested in solving a problem in a particular area, you need to do some sort of research. And like I said, you may not commission an organization or someone to do a big research, but at least you can actually start from somewhere. In certain instances, people have just used their family and friends to gather information. They ask them certain questions, and based on their questions, so they have a certain sample size, and based on their responses, they analyze the responses and see whether this is something that is worth trying. And then they try to prototype. And again, even when they prototype, they test it with the same people that they ask questions from, and then that then starts the process for them. So that's how you want to look at it. You need to find out what the market is.
Wow. Thank you so much. Everything just boils down back to research.
Yeah.
Well, so I think last week we had a session on how to.
I think before you go on, I think when ISP started, I remember that it was the same thing. They had actually done some extensive research on what the needs were for especially tech startups, and they wanted to augment that by creating a space for people to be able to go in there and have training sessions and also have a desk to start off, to have access to internet and all of that. It was not an assumption. It was based on research, right?
Yeah, it was. It was. Thank you so much, Nehemiah. So I think the recording today will be shared. I have a link here. It's a feedback form that I would like us to fill shortly. It will not take about 3 minutes of your time. Kindly look through this and fill for me. But whilst we do that, I would want us to put on our cameras. I just want to see your beautiful faces behind this black. Can you put on your cameras for me here? Okay, we are waiting for you. Ruth, Daniel. Hey, Ruth, Daniel, we can see your face. Ma. Oh, thank you. Okay, we are still waiting
Some
for
of the
you.
folks are camera shy.
Yes. Oh, finally, Ruth is here.
Daniel and
Okay. Daniel has gone off.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I see your
I think
here.
what you want to do is take like a photo of us with our videos on.
Yeah, a
So
photo.
maybe you should let them know so they
Yes.
just understand that it's just briefly.
Yes. It's just a photo, please. Don't run away from me. All right. Thank you so much. You can put off your cameras now. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining in. So apologies for not sharing the previous recording. We'll share it tomorrow so that we can have last week's and today's on. The slides will be shared with us too. And then the next session will also be shared again. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank
We are
you.
done here. All right. Have a good evening.
Hello. Hi, Barnabas, can you hear me? Hello, anybody there?